I really don't know. Like, if I could, I would give both of these first place. But since I have to choose, I'm gonna have to give a slight edge to the... What's up, guys? Today we're going to be doing a tournament bracket speed run of the best IEMs at around $250 on sale. Starting on the left side of the bracket, we got the Crinier Meta versus the Earphone P5 Plus 2. Now, both of these have a cleanish balanced sound, with the main difference being that the Meta is going to be a little bit more sparklier in the treble. It feels more unique to me in the overall sound, and with these Senkai tips, they sound just right, balanced, but just has that enough sparkle in the details. Whereas the 5 Plus 2 is kind of like a balanced all-rounder. It's slightly treble emphasized. The Meta does feel like it comes out more sparkly. It comes out as more like different than the 5 Plus 2. So because of that, I'm gonna take the Meta, and it's just more detailed as well. Next, we got the HBB Deuce versus the ZGAT HBB Arcadias. Both of these are like a bassy sound signature. The main difference is that the Deuce is sub bass over mid bass, whereas the Arcadia is much thicker. It's meatier. It's a lot of like mid bass over sub bass. It scales better as well. I do like that subwoofer kind of like bass head feeling to the Deuce, but because the QC is just it's not the best with Fat Freak, and the whole rollout was just like a complete shit show, I would probably take the Arcadias because it is more like well-rounded. You can make an argument for both of them depending on your personal preference. I think the Arcadias a little bit better in the value, so I'm gonna go with the Arcadias. Moving on, we got the new Kiwiers Astro. These are very nice. I would put them in the same tier as the Odysseys for me. These are like more unique than the quote-unquote other sets. They're a better version of the Chopin to me, so I'm gonna take these over the Chopin. The overall sound is balanced. It has like a little bit like airiness to the sound. It scales decently well, so keep a lookout for these. I'm gonna have a review coming out soon. After that, we got the original Earphone Performer 5 versus the ZGAT Cinco Tres, and the Performer 5 is like a all-rounder, slightly V-shaped kind of sound. It's fun, you get good amount of bass. The treble is very dynamic, whereas the ZGAT Cinco Tres is also a all-rounder sound. I would say the bass texture is better on the Cinco Tres. It's overall less energetic and fatiguing than the Performer 5, so because of that, I'm gonna give it a slight edge to the Cinco Tres because I do think the tuning is more mature than the Performer 5. Then moving down to the bottom left bracket, we have the 7Hz Timeless 2 versus the Tangzu Wuzitian Legend, and this is a no-brainer. Get the Timeless 2. The Wuzitian Legend is just like too bright, too fatiguing, a lot of planar timbre. It's just, they just over boosted the treble. I think they were trying to go for like technicalities. I mean, it is more technical than the Timeless 2 if that's your thing. If you're a treble head, you would probably like the Wuzitian Legend better. But overall, Timeless 2, the smoothest and most natural planar I've heard so far. Very good for the price, lots of variety. I would pick the Timeless 2. Next, we got the Tangzu HBB Heyday versus the Sleevo CK2V. Both of these are brighter, kind of like, you know, treble leaning sets. The Heyday is like very clean. It's slightly, you know, energetic in the sound. It has some planar timbre. Same with the CK2V. It's like slightly bright leaning. It's got a little bit of planar timbre, but overall, I would probably go with the CK2V because it pulls in a little bit more detail, and the sound is a little bit more like refined in the upper mids. It's less shouty in the upper mids. It's basically a better version of the Dunu Brain Damage. It's less fatiguing, less boosted, and if you're looking for like a, you know, better tuned Brain Damage, the CK2V would be the pick. Then after that, we got the Moondrop Condense versus the Tantrum Origin. This is pretty easy as well. Get the Origin. It's a better version of the Condense. It's basically Condense, but with a slightly better driver and more treble extension and more air. A little bit more detailed. I think the refinement's a little bit better on the Origin. And if you're gonna pay over 200 bucks, close to 200 bucks anyways, you might as well get the Origin. Then lastly, on the left side, we got the Kiwiers Orchestra Lite versus the Lecture S15. Both of these follow a neutral, clean, you know, a little bit tamer, vanilla kind of sound. The main difference is that the Orchestra Lite, I guess, sounds more traditional, like just a cleaner version of Harman basically. And then the S15's got tamer vocals, but it's a little bit more airier. And overall, I would say tech-wise, they're on the same. Timbre-wise, both of these sound pretty natural. Maybe a slight edge to the Orchestra Lite because it's on a planar. But overall, because I like vocals better, for a neutral sound, I would probably pick the Orchestra Lite because the vocals just stand out a little bit more. Now moving on to the right side, we got the Kiwiers Quintet versus the Myers CKLVX D62. These two are a little bit different. The D62 sounds more, I guess, like in your face. It's more energetic, slightly more V-shaped than the Quintet. The Quintet, on the other hand, is cleaner, it's more balanced, it pulls in more detail. I wouldn't say neither of these are like super smooth. With the Senkai tips, both of them sound a little bit better than stock because the D62 can sound a little bit sharp and the Quintet can sound a little bit metallic with these stock tips. It just comes down to, do you like a more engaging, more dynamic sound, or do you like something that's more balanced and posing more detailed? Personally, I would go for the D62, but Quintet still very good. Next, we got the ZGOT Odysseys versus the Kiwi Ears KE4. Then this is pretty easy for me. The Odyssey is just a better version of the KE4s to me personally. It has better bass texture. It's not as like warm and thick. It has better layering, a little bit more bite to the vocals. Overall, its skills, they sail relatively around the same, but it does feel more engaging to me at around the same level as the KE4s, so I'm gonna go with the Odysseys. Then after the Odysseys, we got its younger brother, the Lush, versus the Nice Hack NX8. Now both of these are higher volume scaling sets. The NX8 reminds me of the Explorer, similar amount of bass, just with the vocals popping out a little bit more, whereas the Lush is a cleaner, like more like, you know, more technical version of the Explorer with a little bit more air. Value wise, I think the Lush is just better technicalities, better separation. You get more air and space to the sound. Still scales very well, whereas the NX8 is kind of like very redundant to the Explorer if you already have the Explorer. So because of that, I'm gonna go with the Lush. I think it's like a slightly better version of the NX8 and the Explorer. After that, we got the Slevo SL41 versus the Binary Dino Quattro. Both of these are bassier all-rounders. The main difference is that the SL41 has like a thicker and a warmer tonality, whereas the Dino Quattro is more like, you know, sub-bass, more bassy, more traditional, not as warm, as thick. Both of them are very close when it comes to technicalities, you know, the separation, the bass texture, very similar. I would give a slight edge to the Dino Quattro because the bass texture is just a little bit better and the extension, the vocals pop out just a little bit more. The SL41, I know a lot of people like them, but to me, they're just a little bit too warm and thick, and I think the Dino Quattro strikes that balance a little bit better, so I'm gonna go with the Dino Quattros. Then moving down, we got the SimGot EA1000s versus the SimGot ET142s. Now this is actually a lot closer than I thought because the EA1000 is like ancient by sci-fi standards, right? But in terms of technical performance, the ET142 poses in more detail. It's a little bit more sharper in the imaging. Overall, the separation, you can argue it's slightly better than the EA1000s, but the timbre is just much more natural on the EA1000. It's not a planar. I would say the overall bass texture feels a little bit better on the EA1000 still. The vocals pop out a little bit more on the EA1000s. Now I understand if you go for the ET142, it's got more variety, value wise, it's like slightly better, but because my unit of the EA1000s is pretty good, and with the Senkai tips, it kind of like tames down the upper mids and the treble. To me, it's like very good for female vocals. It's clear, it's got slight like edginess, sharpness, and sparkliness to the sound. Because of that, based off of my unit, I'm gonna go with the EA1000s, but your unit may vary. After that, we got the Kiwi Ears Aether versus the Lecture S12 2024. This is pretty simple to me. The Aether is a better version of it. They follow like a similar kind of sound. The vocal extension on the Aether is slightly better, as well as the overall bass texture. The driver Kiwi Ears is using is also better than the S12 2024. So because of those reasons, I'm gonna give a slight edge to the Aether. Next, we got the EPZ P50s versus the Let's Sure Condenser 4. Both of these are very good vocal sets. Main difference is that the P50 is more all-rounded. It has the low end filled in. It's less airy and I guess smooth as the Condenser 4. The Condenser 4 is a lot sweeter when it comes to female vocals. It has less low end overall. It emphasizes the upper mids a little bit more. They're also both around the same price with similar technical performance. I would lean slightly towards the P50s because it is like more all-rounded in the vocals. Overall, I would give it a slight edge to the P50s because it is like a better all-rounder. Then lastly, we got the ZGOT Daschinkos versus the Dunu Da Vincis. Both of these have a bassier kind of sound. The Daschinkos are almost like a bass height kind of set, whereas the Da Vincis is warmer, it's thicker. It has like a heavier no weight to the overall presentation. I would say scaling wise, Da Vinci scales a little bit better. It's more relaxed. You get that bass, but you don't quite get the same texture as the Daschinkos, especially with the vocals. The vocals pop out a little bit more on the Daschinkos. Overall, I'm leaning towards the Daschinkos a little bit more because the Da Vinci just feels a little bit too thick sometimes. It doesn't have like the resolution to the bass slam as something like the T Pros, for example. It doesn't have the extension in the treble and the vocals. So because of that, I'm gonna give it a slight edge to the Daschinko. Now moving on to the next stage, on the left we got the Crinier Metas versus the ZGAT Arcadias. So these two are very different when it comes to sound. The Meta is obviously more sparkly, it's cleaner, it's less bassy, it feels better balance than the Arcadias. It doesn't scale as well as the Arcadias. Like if you're looking just for a very bassy kind of sound, the Arcadias would be better than the Metas. But I think overall I do prefer the Meta a little bit more at mid volume with these Senkai tips, and it's got more detail, it's more technical. You can't really get it anymore, that's the only downside. But in terms of the overall sound, I'm leaning slightly towards the Meta with the right tips, but the Arcadia is very close behind. Next, we got the Kibiers Astral versus the Zigat Cinco Tres, and I'm just gonna take the Astrals. It sounds just tonally better, it sounds more natural. It doesn't have the same, I guess, like subwoofery sound as the Cinco Tres. Like it doesn't slam as hard in the bass, but when it comes to the vocals, the treble, I think it's better tuned on the Astrals, and it's more technical as well. So I'm gonna go with the Astrals. Then moving down, we got the 7Hz Timeless 2 versus the Sleevo CK2V. So the Sleevo is more of a treble, like slightly bright leaning kind of sound. I would personally take the Timeless 2 because it's smoother, the timbre is better than the CK2V. You get more variety with the nozzles, and overall I think it's a little bit more refined than the CK2V in terms of the overall tonality. Then lastly, we got the Tantrum Origin versus the Kibiers Orchestra Lite, and both of these follow a kind of neutral, balanced, more clean kind of sound. Main difference is that the Origin just has more mid bass. It feels fuller. The treble extension and the vocals are around the same on both, I would say. Like technical performance wise, not a huge difference. My personal pick would be the Origin because it does feel fuller in the overall sound. It feels a little bit less vanilla, even though it is still very neutral. It's not like super dynamic. Neither of these sets are super dynamic, but because the Origin does feel a little bit fuller, I'm gonna go with the Origin. Now moving on to the right side, we got the Myers CKLVX D62 versus the Zigat Odysseys. In terms of the bass texture, I would prefer the Odysseys a little bit more. Scaling wise, Odysseys just scale better. It feels more immersive than the D62s. The D62s with the Senkai Wides are very enjoyable, very engaging at mid volume. It feels very dynamic, but the Odysseys to me just scales better. You still get the same dynamic kind of sound, but you get better scaling and it's more immersive with the music now. So I'm gonna go with the Odysseys. Then after that, we got the Zigat Lush versus the Barney Dano Quattro. So these two are pretty different. The Dano Quattro is a mid-volume, bassy kind of all-rounder sound. The Lush is more of a clean, balanced, high volume scaling sound. I prefer the Lush a little bit more because I like listening loud. If you listen at mid volume, you probably like the Dano Quattro better. The bass slams harder on the Dano Quattro. The timbre overall, they're around the same, I would say. But like with scaling, I think the Lush is more of a immersive and quote unquote unique listening experience. So because of that, I'm gonna go with the Lush. Moving down, we got the Simgot EA1000s versus the Kibiers Aether. Now both of these are fairly similar. Main difference is that the Aether sub bass goes a little bit deeper. The vocals aren't as forward as the EA1000s, and it's a little more airy than the EA1000s. The formats on the other hand pop out more when it comes to the vocals. The overall sound is less airy, it's quote unquote more sharp. I think for most people, they would probably like the Aether a bit more, and due to QC, the Aether seems like the safer pick, I guess. If you prioritize female vocals, the EA1000s are still better, but for most people, the Aether is just better balanced. You get less like fatigue in the upper mids, you get slightly more sub bass extension, overall sound more airy, a little bit smoother. In terms of QC, so far Aether has been pretty like consistent. So because of that, I'm gonna give a slight edge to the Aether. Then finally, we got the P50s versus the Disjinkos. Very different sets. Disjinko obviously a lot more bassier. P50 more vocal centric, better balance, better all-rounder. As an all-rounder, I would personally go for the P50s, but if you like more bass, the Disjinkos are still very solid. Now moving on to the semifinals, we got the Crinier Metas versus the Kibiers Astral. Now both of these are actually pretty close when it comes to the sound. The main difference is that the Meta is going to be sparklier, a little bit sharper in the treble and the imaging, whereas the Astral is cleaner. It sounds less like sparkly and I guess like OCD like, more airy and smooth. And personally, I would go for the Astral because number one, you just can't get the Metas anymore, and number two, I do think it sounds a little bit more natural. Then moving down, we got the 7Hz Timeless 2 versus the Tantrum Origin. This is pretty simple. I would pick the Timeless 2. It's better value, you get more variety, it's equally as smooth as the Origin, maybe not as full and texture, slightly less texture in the bass, but I think overall it's more detailed. You just get a lot more variety with the tuning nozzles. I think bang for your buck in terms of value, I would go with the Timeless 2. Now moving on to the right side of the semifinals, we got the Zigat Odysseys versus the Zigat Lush. This is pretty simple as well. I would just take the Odysseys. I think it's a slightly better version of the Lush. Both scale pretty well. Main difference is that the bass texture, the slam, is just more authoritative, more, I guess, like impactful on the Odysseys. You get more bite and slightly more resolution in terms of the upper mids. The overall engagement, slightly more V-shaped version of the Lush at higher volume. Then lastly, we got the Kiwi Ears Aether versus the EPZ P50s. Both are fairly similar, but not quite similar. The Aether is a balanced kind of sound, not as forward in the vocals, more airy. I would say not timbre-wise, not as good as the P50s, whereas the P50s is more, forward in the vocals, less airy. So really depends on what kind of sound you're looking for. Both are very good all-rounders. I just prefer vocals more. I like the vocals to pop out a little bit more, which is why I'm gonna go with the P50s. Just realized I was saying semifinals for quarterfinals, but now we are on the semifinals. And for the semifinals on the left side, we got the Kiwi Ears Astro versus the 7Hz Timeless 2. In terms of value, I would say the Timeless 2 is better because it goes on sale for like close to $200. Very good deal at that price. Whereas the Astro, hasn't gone on sale yet, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna go on sale, right? It's, it's Linso. When it comes to detail separation, very similar, slight edge to the Astro. Timbre is also a slight edge to the Astro. Scaling wise, fairly the same depending on the nozzle that you're using with the Timeless 2. But I think overall, the Astro just feels a little bit more engaging in the vocals, slightly like more airier than the Timeless 2. And because of that, I'm gonna go with the Astros. I think the Timeless 2 are still very good, but Astros just edges that out just a little bit more. Now, as for the semifinals on the right side, we got the Zigat Odysseys versus the EPZ P50s. This is pretty simple. I would take the Odysseys. It's more immersive, it scales better, it has more dynamics, it feels more engaging. I just feel more connected to the music with the Odysseys because, the P50 is still very good all-rounder vocal set, but it's just, it's just another all-rounder kind of sound. It doesn't do anything special per se, and if you want to be the very best, you have to stand out, and I think the Odysseys do stand out, whereas the P50s are just like a very good value. Then finally in the finals, we got the Kiwi Ears Astro versus the Zigat Odysseys. This is a bit tricky because I like both of them very much. The Odysseys are obviously a higher scaling set. They're better for higher volumes. The Astro is more of like a mid to slightly mid high volume set. It sounds cleaner than the Odysseys. It has more detail. It really depends on what track and what mood I'm feeling that day. If I'm cranking it up, obviously I'm gonna go with the Odysseys. If I'm listening to rock, to bands like pop, hip hop, probably the Odysseys. But if I'm listening to something that's more indie, slower acoustic ballads, I'm probably gonna go with the Astros. This is actually extremely close, and it really comes down to like a coin flip. I really don't know, like if I could, I would give both of these first place, but since I have to choose, and since I am listening to more vocals and indie these days, I'm gonna have to give a slight edge to the Astro, but just very slight. If you're curious where the Estrella is, I can't really include it. It's my own collab. I would probably put it Astro, Odysseys, Estrella, and then like maybe like Timeless 2, EA1000s, like around that tier. But yeah, hope this was helpful. My throat is dead. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for the Astro review, and I'll see everyone in the next one. Shout out to Dom Q, Rorix Cat, Mystic Spoon Attack, B Urac, Discal Scaldus, Walker Standard, Patrick, User, Mr. Gorillas, Polly J, Anton Risto, Giseng Yon, Christopher Jackson, Name, Henry Claudia, Son of a Horse, Obi, Wizard, Frickalicious, Tapis R, Contain Guava Juice Gains, Shrimpback Lay, Forever New, Choco Norris 420, FKSRG, Treble Will Extended, 777ZK, Cousin Fat, Torque Cog, Ken, Zane, Early Bird, Oh Really, Georgios, Anthony, and Julius. Thank you guys so much.